How's it going, everyone? My name is Aiden, and today we're going to be looking at something pretty special. This is a long time coming after including it in my favorite pens of last year, but today we're going to be taking a look at the Conway Stewart Series 58 fountain pen, which I've really been enjoying. There are a lot of things to like about this pen. First of all, I do want to say thank you to Conway Stewart for lending me this pen to take a look at it. It's been pretty much a daily accompaniment in my writing activities day to day for the past probably 6 months now. And over that time, I've gotten to know this pen really well. I think it represents something that I wish I saw more in a lot of modern fountain pens, in that it's really inspired by vintage pens while still feeling sort of like a vintage pen. A lot of modern iterations of vintage pens are sort of like a ship of Theseus type moment. They take all the pieces, they make them a little bigger, make them a little more modern, and then what you're left with is something that really doesn't feel like what it used to represent. And I don't think that's the case with this pen. You see, like with the, and not that these other examples are bad pens, but like the Parker 51 modern version, or with the Armando Simoni homages to former Omoth models, or frankly, some of the other Conway Stewart models. Again, they're great pens, but they're really different than the pens that were made in the past that we really consider those wonderful vintage pens. So what makes this different? Well, in a word, it's a lot smaller. It's really not quite a pocket pen, but it's not a full-size pen in the modern sense. Conway Stewart describes it as a traditionally sized pen, which I completely agree with. If you compare it to a lot of vintage offerings, this really does stack up to the same size. They also say that this does indeed pay homage to a past Conway Stewart model, and I wish I still had it. I used to have a vintage Conway Stewart example really, really close to this, but I guess I'll try and find a picture because it really does remind me of their past offer. But anyways, the pen itself. This is a Conway Stewart Series 58 Frisian with this lovely black and white cracked marble material here. It comes sporting a number 5 18 karat gold nib, which I believe is of a Yovo make with the plastic feed and plastic housing. The trim is gold plated, except for the cap rings are actually 9 karat gold, which is quite uncommon. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if it actually does, if it makes it more long lasting or anything, but it's a nice addition. And then of course it uses a standard international cartridge or converter. So then the size itself, you see compared to a TWSBI Eco, the Eco's definitely got a little size on it while capped, and uncapped it's much of the same story. And you can definitely feel this in the hand. The Series 58 is 4.77 inches uncapped, which is definitely pretty small compared to modern pens. And posted at 6.33 inches. Now it does post pretty well, and it feels alright, but personally I'm not really someone that likes to post their pens, and I do think it fits really great in the hand. A pen that is light and small like this is much, much better for longer writing sessions when you're taking a bunch of notes in a meeting or whatever. It's a lot less unwieldy, a lot less unwieldy than like a custom A23. Again, love this pen, but for longer writing sessions, I think something smaller is really much more the vibe. Now, like I mentioned, Conway Stewart does make other pens which are a little larger. They make a Series 100, which is a pretty similar design to this, but more of a modern size. And that one is about 5.1 inches uncapped and 6.7 inches posted, so definitely quite a bit bigger. And these pens, made by Conway Stewart, they are made in a sort of bespoke fashion to where I'm not sure how much control you actually have over the process, but they don't just have stock on hand. Like I mentioned in my previous review of the Conway Stewart Churchill, which you can check out. I really enjoyed that pen. They make what pen you order when you order it, and then ship it to you when it's done. And then you can also include options for like engravings and things like that. And so that gets into a little more about Conway Stewart, the brand. It's definitely a pretty historically significant brand in the world of fountain pens. It's been around for a long time. It was founded in 1905. But I think it's gone through a cycle of going out of business, coming back into business a few times, and the current iteration in the UK is owned by Bespoke British Pens. And I definitely do have to say that they pay attention to and respect and honor that heritage that a brand that's more than 100 years old has to offer. Frankly, I even think it would be cooler if they offered many more options similar to this pen. And so the pen itself, it has that classic style Conway Stewart clip, which I really enjoy. It looks super similar to those vintage options. It has a black cap jewel on the cap. The cap band is a series of 3 small cap bands. And the pen itself, pretty small writing section. It's comfortable, but it definitely is small. You can really fit your fingers around there. It's in black, unlike the rest of the pen, which is in the cracked ice material. And then the body itself is straight until it tapers down towards the end and ends in a point very similar to the cap. And you can really see not much space was wasted. Screwing into the barrel all the way, there's a tiny bit of space between where the converter ends and the end of the barrel begins. Some Conway Stewart pens, I believe, have like a brass insert to make the barrel a little more weighty. This is not included in this pen, which is a decision I definitely agree with, because for a pen like this, you do sort of want it to be light if it's going to be an everyday writer. And so with those vintage comparisons, I do want to show you it next to a few vintage pens that I have. Hopefully I can go find those. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is a Parker Vacuumatic Major. I believe it's the major size in comparison to this Series 58, and they are basically exactly the same size. So this is definitely much more in line with a lot of vintage offerings. So like I said, when it comes down to it, I really enjoy what this pen represents, and it's something I wish I saw of a lot more in other companies, which is respecting the vast tradition of fountain pens, not only by appearance and aesthetic, but also just in the way that fountain pens used to be used. They were an everyday tool, using them all day, so they needed to be a little smaller, a little lighter. While modern offerings are great, they're definitely more for quick notes or just looking fancy on the desk. Again, if that's your thing, totally respect it. I think so many modern pens, so many giant pens are ones that I love and use all the time. But I do have a special place in my heart for pens. And so if any brands out there are listening, my 2 cents would be to really pay attention to what this pen is doing and to maybe take some inspiration from that. Now, when it gets down to brass tacks, Conway Stewart, they make great pens, but you do get what you pay for, right? So this pen retails for $428. Conway Stewart did give me a code. If you want to go through their website, you can use Aiden Burnell, all caps, to get 5% off. So it helps a little bit. So this pen would be like $406. And the larger version of this pen, the Series 100, goes for $473. So about $50 more than this one for a modern-sized pen. And again, you can get 5% off that one too with that same code. So I've talked enough about this pen. I hope you can ascertain that I really do enjoy this pen. I enjoy what it represents. I've really been loving using it in my day-to-day writing over these past few months. So now let's check it out in action. So first off, to sort of give you a better look at the pen compared to other examples, here I have the Series 58 next to some modern offerings. Here's the Pilot Custom 823 and the TWSBI Eco, 2 of my favorite pens. And I think hopefully a lot of you should have at least some sort of knowledge of those pens. And so you can see definitely the Series 58 is much shorter. Now compared to perhaps some vintage friends, this is a Parker 51 in a Schaefer balance. This is a vacuum Schaefer balance, which I restored myself. Those things are not easy to restore, let me tell you. And this is a Parker 51, which I did not restore myself, but I didn't need to because it's an aerometric. So, and you can see that Series 58 really does line up quite well with the Schaefer balance. Parker 51 is a little bigger, but it's also the hooded nib that is a little bit of that. But when you compare it to another vintage classic like the Vacuumatic, you can see really there's a common theme here. They're all quite similar in size. And then finally, compared to a pen that I am reviewing very soon and really enjoying, this is a Magna Carta Mag 600 with their true flex nib. You can see compared to a quote-unquote like large modern pen, it really is quite diminutive. But that is perfectly okay. So let's get started with the writing sample. This is a Conway Stewart Series 58 Frisian, and the ink is Pilot Iroshizuku Yamabudo. It doesn't really match the pen that much, but it's a lovely ink, so why not? The nib is an 18 karat gold extra fine number 5 Yovo nib with a nice and subtle Conway Stewart logo on the nib. Can't really see much, it's laser engraved, and then the 18 karat stamping. Quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This nib itself is relatively smooth for an extra fine, but it's got a little bit of feedback, which I enjoy, but not everyone is a fan of. I would probably say it's like a 6 out of 10 on the, from the scratchiest thing ever to absolute buttery smooth. It's also, relatively well tuned, especially for, if you're working on pad paper, you don't want an absolute gusher. And for an everyday pen like this, that does make a lot of sense to keep that in mind. Now the nib itself does have a little bit of give, a little bit of flexibility, but it's not a flex nib by any means. It's just, it gives a little bit of nice give while you're writing, which is something I enjoy about gold nibs. Well, of course, not every gold nib, but let's not get into that. But yeah, I think this is a great writer, a great pen for its size. Really does offer quite a punch. I very much hope you enjoyed that writing sample. Again, I think this is an amazing pen. I really have enjoyed incorporating it into my daily writing for the last few months now. If you're a person that enjoys pens on the slightly smaller side, if you enjoy vintage pens, I'd recommend maybe giving this a try. So thank you very much for watching. Thanks again to Conway Stewart for lending me this pen. And yeah, that just about does it. Have a good one.